Welcome to the first of what I hope will be many Legion of Reason podcast Piehole chats. Today's topic is the problem of evil. Now, I know a lot of people have, including Matt Dillahunty, dealt with this in quite a bit of detail, but I do have a little bit of a different take. And what we're going to be dealing with today is a particular aspect of the problem of evil, which is not generally dealt with. Now, the problem of evil was first formulated back in ancient Greece by Epicurus, and he wrote, "Is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God?" Now, I do think that the problem of natural evil, that is, natural disasters, things that we do not do to each other, they do not have any human involvement, already kills the omnibenevolent, omnipresent, omniscient God. We'll call that God the 3-0 God. The existence of natural disasters is incompatible with a kind, loving God. I mean, why would God allow a tsunami that killed 150,000 in the Pacific Rim? Well, some people will say, and we'll get to this later, it allows people to become heroic, etc. But what kind of a test is the murder of 150,000 people? And I call it a murder because if you you have the power to stop something and do not, well, at best it's depraved indifference. So we have this issue, but we're going to deal with a different aspect of it. And that is the problem of evil wherein one person harms another, and why does God not intervene? Now, that is a particular aspect of the problem of evil. We will call that the problem of personal evil. Okay. Now, Ali Rizvi's post on his Facebook page, and he will be a future guest on the podcast, states it thus: "If you had the power to, would you stop the slavery and rape of 10-year-old girls by ISIS? That's the difference between you and God." And this is a lay formulation of what I would call the problem of personal evil, and it's a perfectly good one. But the comments on his Facebook page were so typical. One of the ones that I really don't like is, and I don't like it in general, is when people quote C.S. Lewis. Okay. My advice to people who quote C.S. Lewis and think it's profound and compelling, it's not. Okay, it's just not. Here's the quote: "Atheists express their rage on God all the time, even when in their opinion he doesn't even exist." Well, see, we have to argue from within the framework that we're presented with. That is, God exists, so why doesn't he stop evil? Okay, we don't really think that God exists. I mean, come on, really? We're atheists. But we have to argue from within this framework in some of our counter-apologetics. It's just that way. So, there's another one that I really can't stand, and it's this whole, there is a God-shaped void in your heart. Now, these platitudes are so awful. I'm embarrassed for people who actually use them. And in fact, this one, which is usually ascribed to Blaise Pascal of the Pascal's wager fame or infamy, it makes me want to say to that person, you have a reason-shaped hole in your head. And that's just as insulting and awful, okay? So don't, please, anybody that uses that, just stop them right there. Don't do it. Oh, well. One of the more common responses to the whole problem of personal evil is, here, I'll read one here. "Kind of flawed theology here. God apparently has to conform to a certain pattern of behavior. What if God is using these tragedies as a means of testing us so we can rise to the occasion?" Wow. In other words, this is a test. I've gone through some pretty difficult tests in university. None of them were in this kind of nasty, okay? It is immoral to test people by harming or allowing harm to come to somebody. I mean, come on, really? No, I mean, if God is doing that, it is already an immoral being. And again, this problem of personal evil and non-intervention kill the 3-0 God. You cannot have harm coming to somebody and not intervening and be described as kind and good and moral. So toss that out. But by far the most common response to this particular form of the problem of evil is God can't intervene with someone's free will. Well, why not? Really, that's a rhetorical question. Why not? Oh, we can't, because we have to allow people to act and in their way, and so God could figure out who's good and who's bad. Doesn't God already know that? I mean, he is omniscient, right? Why does he need to do this? The other part of free will is, well, intervening in free will would be immoral. Well, the problem is, in all of this, the victim is generally forgotten, and that victim is having his or her free will violated by the perpetrator. Okay? Which is the lesser evil? Violating a victim's violating a victim's free will, or violating a victim of the perpetrator to prevent harm? Which one of those two things is the lesser? Oh, it doesn't make any sense. If somebody has the power to intervene in the prevention of harm, and they do not do that, we already consider that a crime. And the idea that God gets off because he is somehow held to a different standard, a lower standard, by the way, than what we would actually hold ourselves to, or because he is all-powerful, and worse, we're going to get to the objection of who are you to judge God. It's moral relativism of the worst kind, because you know what? It means that morality, whether in action or inaction, is moral, is dependent upon who is doing the acting or inaction. So that is the ultimate moral relativism, and it is absolutely heinous. Okay. And I've already talked about the victim's free will being violated by the perpetrator. So free will cannot be used as a defense against the incompatibility of the problem of personal evil and God, and the existence of a 3-0 God, the omniscient, omnipresent, omnibenevolent God. Just cannot be used. So at this point, you will often hear the rebuttal, well, who are you to judge God? Now, Matt Dillahunty this week posted exactly on this subject, and he pretty much says exactly what I'm going to say here, but I'm going to take it one step further. The only reason that you would not be allowed to judge God is if might is right. Okay? God is so much more powerful. Who are you to judge him because he is so much more powerful? That is the archaic might is right kind of thinking. We tossed that out long ago. Might is not right. Get over it. So my response to the problem of when I'm posed with this question, who are you to judge God, is to say this to that person. I'll tell you who I am. I am a morally autonomous being with a social duty to make moral judgments when actions or inaction affect the lives of others. And worse than that, who are you to abandon that duty? Because that's exactly what they're doing. As soon as God gets put into the equation, they are abandoning their duty to actually make moral pronouncements. You don't get to do that. Now, if I'm not qualified to judge God, neither is that other person qualified to say they are good, kind, loving, omniscient, but whatever. Because if I don't have a basis for making a moral pronouncement, neither does that other person who's making that claim. And the only reason this comes up is because they want to shut the discussion down. This discourse is over. And the reason I'm not allowed to make a moral pronouncement is because they don't agree with my moral pronouncement. Well, too bad. The God of the that is described in the Bible is clearly a monster, and if it existed, I would not worship it. But in the end, all of these rationalizations are just a cover-up to hide a very ugly fact. And that fact is that the existence and the non-existence of a God are exactly identical. Here endeth the lesson. Ramen.